I'm watching YouTube videos as I shower just so I can actually get my finger on the pulse. Otherwise, next week it's
you're left behind.
What excites me is the idea of how fast you can build and how fast you can get things into customers' hands. But what also frightens me is the speed of change. I was on the Uber on the way here and I built a little prototype, like an actual web application. Prototyping is wild. You just have to go through a UX designer. Now you can go and prototype in the matter of minutes. We're not even doing PRDs anymore. We're going straight to prototyping. The old process just doesn't exist. It can't exist anymore in this day and age. The relationship between engineering and product is evolving and changing massively. We're now having to rebuild and redefine our entire operating model with engineering from a product perspective because it's evolved that much.
Wow. Welcome back to the On the Pulse podcast. My name's Tony Mulcock, the co-founder of Pulse Group. Today on the Pulse, we're joined by Blake Moseley. Blake is the VP of Product at JUUL, where he's helping shape how some of the world's most exciting brands think about advocacy, growth, and community in the age of AI. With over a decade of experience across products, technology, and digital strategy, Blake has built his career at the intersection of agency products, working at scale across global organizations before making the move into high-growth startup environments. In this episode, we're going to explore the journey, the move from agency into startup, and why some of the best product talent is now coming from that world. Blake, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, mate.
How are you feeling?
Mate, first podcast, nervous, but here we go.
Natural. I've obviously only done a few, and I'm still in exactly the same zone. Trust me. Look, it's great to have you here. Absolute pleasure. Thank you for doing it.
Thank you for having me.
There's a lot to talk about, and I think one of the kind of things that sort of screams out is, obviously, we want to talk about your journey because it's been a really fantastic journey so far, and there's a lot to go. But it'd be really good to sort of get into the nuts and bolts of that. But also, like, I think what's even more interesting is that journey transitioning from Oz, over to here. So I think it would be really good to sort of hear about the journey, up until that point where you made, a massive change in your life, right? Massive transition.
Yeah.
And then I think at some point we'll talk about, how that difference is between, technology, that industry in Australia and then here. So tell us a bit about the journey so far. It'd be great to hear about it.
It's been a wild journey. I've up until recently been in agency world almost my entire career. So I started in humble beginnings in ad operations for IPG media brands. Loved that at the time and thought that I was going to do that for the rest of my career, which now in hindsight is just a bit wild to think about. And then very quickly kind of scaled up and excelled across the agency ecosystem, but always very much focused on the product and the innovation side of the agency. So always worked for a specialty agency within the group.
Okay.
So worked for a company called Ansible, which was the mobile division of IPG Media Brands. Right. And at the time we developed AR and VR gamification experiences for brands for the likes of Hyundai. And back then, that was in 2015. That was 11
Time
years.
flies, right?
God, man, I was about to start swearing and go, God, I'm getting old. But yeah, we were building really cool stuff back then.
Yeah.
And that was before we, Meta changed their name to Meta, before, the whole metaverse was coming in and going to be this big thing. It was much before then. So always name of the podcast, I always had my finger on the pulse, always in terms of like innovation and change. And then I had a small stint, wanted to challenge myself and move into something that I've always felt really uncomfortable with. It's not a natural thing for me, which is sales. So I had a short stint as a commercial director for a startup, and that was my first dabble in the startup world. But in a satellite office in Australia, in Sydney.
How different was that? How did that feel like?
Mate, it was like day and night. It was interesting. I think more that changed for me was going from big agency to small startup, particularly a satellite office was even probably more challenging because you don't have the direct experience or direct touch points as you would if you were in HQ. So it was challenging for the change from agency to startup, but also just being from a startup in a satellite office is even more challenging in itself. So I did that for a short period of time, and actually got approached by one of my old CEOs over to a new agency at WPP that he was the CEO for.
Okay.
and moved over with him into production. So a whole new world on top of everything I've always done.
Okay.
But very much focused again on driving the innovation in the agency. So it's where I started as a strategy director, but ultimately it was around how do we capitalize on data to personalize experiences for consumers at scale. So really innovation in production, and then made massive strides there. I was there for almost maybe 12, 18 months, I think it was. And was lucky enough, I built something in Sydney in Australia, which is still classified as a satellite office, but a big satellite office, if anything. And Australia, I think in agency world, is interestingly a place where you can make and break things. Like you get to build, you're almost like the startup of the holding group.
Right.
Things move really fast. You have to be really measured in your approach. You can't just kind of throw cash wherever you'd like because it is a smaller office.
Yeah.
But the innovation is really key to the region. So we built, my CEO and I built something together, which was later known as the addressable content practice, which was launched globally for WPP. It was a partnership between us, Hogarth, and WPP, and Group M, to be able to deliver addressable, personalized content at scale.
Right. Okay.
Because that launched globally, I had the opportunity to then, get on a plane and move over to the UK, the sunny UK.
Yeah. Well,
mate.
Yeah, exactly.
The beautiful
How
weather.
fooled you were.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's just pause that because that's a decent segue at some point into that, because I know we're gonna talk about that, and I'm really interested to hear about that sort of journey as to, and where we find ourselves sitting here talking today. What do you think was kind of the key in those early parts? What was the catalyst that kind of accelerated your career? Because there's a lot of things that you've done, and a lot of the focus obviously has been within that agency world, which I'm pretty familiar with. I don't know it as sort of deeply as you, but I've worked with the the WPPs, the Group M's, the IPG media brands, big companies like that, Hogarth. But I sort of done bits and pieces in different areas of hiring. But what do you think, thinking back on that time, in Australia, in agency, kind of real vibrant cut and thrust world that you were in? What was the real bit that kind of just really kicked things on for you? Can you remember that? Is it a standout moment?
I will never forget, and if she ever watches this, she'll know exactly who I'm talking about. My very first manager when I was in AdOps left such an imprint on me, to the point of leadership, but also management, but also just dealing with hard conversations and how to best deal with those, but also to know how to manage up at the same time. The imprint that she left has very much lasted until where I am right now.
Really? Okay.
Just in terms of my leadership style, in terms of how I approach, just management of my team, which, I really try and strive to have more of an influence than it is, leader, like more dictatorship. It's, really trying to influence the team to the greater good. But if I talk selfishly about myself, I think the difference, I think the thing that's helped me get to where I am is my ability, my resilience, but my ability to be able to really find the solution in the problem. Okay. It's been a massive thing for me. Like I was having a conversation with my CEO yesterday, and we were having a laugh, saying I'm a fixer and a builder. Right. I'm able to identify opportunities, but then I'm also able to fix things that aren't working, and that's a skill. That's a real skill. Yeah, and agencies lean into that, right? Yeah. And what I'm finding is startups as well, because you're able to come in and fix what's broken, but help move the business to a new direction. Forward. Interesting. Do you think that sort of element, I know we're going to talk about this later, but just for the purpose of this now, do you think that element of working in agencies, multiple brands and clients that you're working with at pace, under pressure, do you think that's been a really good foundation for you to sort of really thrive in this sort of more senior leadership part of your career? 100%. The agencies teach you so many good soft skills that you don't even prepare yourself for. The amount of clients that you're working on and the pressure that you are under to deliver is nothing a business can try and train you for. And that's why we right now, and I know we'll get to this, but that's why I'm looking for agency people to join the startup, because they can work under pressure. They know how to deal with many different priorities coming at them at 1,000,000 miles an hour. They know how to prioritize. They know how to navigate when, a client's quite demanding. So my early days, and not even my early days, it's up until recently, it has really set me up to be able to deal with, those complexities of, running a business, or, even managing or working with many different types of clients. I think it's interesting as well, because it allows you to be agile in the way that you approach different clients, because agencies, you're not just working on one category generally, you're working on many different brands from many different categories. So you kind of have to be able to adapt really quickly to different brands and different needs. You're not going to always work on fashion. You're not going to always work on beauty. You're going to be working on automotive, or you're going to be working on CBG, but you may work on them all together at the same time. And so be able to lift and kind of be a chameleon almost.
And lots of different people and personalities within that, right? That you're having to adapt to. And some people you could, it's like anything, isn't it? Like you could say the same thing, in a different tone, and it would be received very differently. So but also like when you're working with different clients who, have got different deadlines and kind of expectations, and the way that and certain people that have got certain demands, and the way that they are, it must teach you some real skills in that, because you're just thrown from one thing to the next, and you've just got to think on your feet and pick things up quickly.
I think one of the key things it taught me was not to take things personally.
Right.
I think, working with different clients, it's very easy sometimes to read the room incorrectly. So one of the things I learned very early on in my career is be able to almost I've got a Blake that's professional Blake, and I've got a personal Blake, and I've trained myself really hard to be able to separate the two. So if something happens at work that may feel quite personal, I can leave it at the room.
You can completely cauterize that. It's I
don't take it on. I'm like, this is not about me actually in this situation. So
it might feel like it, but it's not.
And it's very easy to kind of see above and not get too emotional about it, and then be able to then decide what your best next move is, or approach. So I definitely think in terms of that has been a massive skill that I've kind of had to learn. I didn't, no choice, but then the necessity of having to work with so many different clients with different personalities, with different demands. Some more than others.
Because it must be, that is a real art, by the way, because it's something that I've really sort of challenged myself to get better at, actually, because the sort of separation is it's difficult sometimes, because when you're really passionate about something, and within your working life, same in your personal life, you sort of get attached to it, don't you? But it's that kind of skill and that art to sort of be attached to it to a point, but then realize that actually some of the things you're saying, or people are sort of challenging your ideas and your innovation, that I would rather someone be really innovative and come at me with ideas all the time, and you can chuck a bit of water on them and sort of dampen them down a little bit, rather than not having that. I'd rather that sort of that drive and that desire, and also like I want people kind of bringing ideas to me and challenging me as well as a business leader, right? So I think it's but that's part of sort of your journey, isn't it? As a person, as a human, as a leader. You're welcoming people to give you ideas and push you.
It's interesting. It's an interesting concept. You think about, you're almost opening the door for people to have, you're having to be very vulnerable and allowing people to have opinions of your work. Which I think is actually, it's interesting. I've never thought of it like that, where it's actually quite an interesting state that you have to be continuously in, where you're opening yourself up for, other people's opinions, like continuously. You're on the stage.
Listen, we've got a very good CPTO friend of mine who is coming on to one of the episodes. I've known him for 15 years. I've built a number of teams for him. Lovely guy. I've got we're about to launch a hire for him at the moment, product director. And one of the things he said to me was, he said, I want this person to have my job. That's the first thing he said to me.
That's a proper leader.
Right, proper leader. And but actually to say that, some people would say, yeah, but you know each other really well, and he's going to say that. that's just the kind of guy he is. You know, the mindset that he has when he sets a hire in his mind that he's, you know, signed off and he's clear that that's the hire he needs to make. He's like, it's this actual position of this hire is that it's someone that, you know, will be his successor. So it, you know, and it's about vulnerability, and it's also about people. You know, I've always said, you know, and anyone that sort of knows me, that's worked with me and for me, I want people to push me all the time. I want people to come into me with ideas. You know, there's going to be people in the room, you know, that have got much better ideas than me.
But that's what you should be hiring for.
Exactly.
Because you need to be able to supplement your 100%. I mean, weakness is the wrong word I'm not looking for, but your gaps, right? That's what a true leader should be doing, is you're hiring the people around you to make you better and to make the team better. I think a lot of, you know, I've seen this firsthand, where you have a leader come into a role and they're threatened by the team around them. You know, that's not good for anything.
No.
Not for the business, not for morale, not for the team members.
Yeah.
You know, like the way that I personally like to hire is I like to hire specifically, you know, for the gaps that I have, because collectively us as a team can deliver really good stuff that way.
But it's like anything, isn't it? It's about a balance. It's about a balance and a blend, a good blend of skills that come together, different strengths from different people, right? And those strengths make up for other people's
100%.
maybe weaknesses, or, you know, maybe sort of just, I suppose, gaps in skills, right?
I mean, it's interesting you say that, because that was I guess something I had to learn on again early on in my management career, was not everyone can be like me, you know, and so trying to always hire and find someone that is really passionate, that wants to go above and beyond all the time and wants to deliver more than what's required. You know, that's not everyone's makeup, and
That's not real life either.
Correct. And you've sometimes got to take a step backwards and go, also first impressions aren't always the case. Like when you interview someone, you probably know this more than anyone, the first interview sometimes is shocking because they're just nervous. So it's being able to see under that hood and see the, you know, the potential in somebody, but also that they're not going to always be what you're the perfect makeup. You need to bring a different blend of different skills together to deliver value, really.
Yeah. I think there's always, anyone that's ambitious and wants to always continuously develop and you know, advance their careers and do as well as they can, there's always going to have that mindset of high expectations, you know, a driven person, a driven individual, high expectations of themselves and others around them. But it's about that balance of those expectations and actually how realistic those expectations are, because you've got to get that right. And also you've got to be able to, as a leader, you know this, you've got to be able to be comfortable of like relinquishing responsibility, right? And that is really difficult, because it's really difficult, and that is linked to expectations, because you know if you do something, you have it done a certain way, but you're never going to be able to do everything. And you know, volume over quality is a big challenge for a lot of people. That sort of quality element, you know, I don't care what anyone says, as soon as you bring volume into stuff, it substitutes quality. So, you know, in order to get around that, it's bringing in those people that can make a difference. And you know, we've got this, you know, with our business now, we're 19 months old today, actually, right? So, yeah, right. But we're bringing people in that, you know, we know that we trust, that some of the people we know. But again, it's that kind of whole element of like trust, autonomy, you know, being able to sort of give something to someone and know they're going to run with it and do it just as well as you. And that's the really hard bit. And I think something trust is massive, right? It's huge. But something you mentioned earlier, which really kind of like struck a chord with me, is about, you know, I said, what was the changing point for you, turning point? And you said about, you know, someone that you managed, and, you know, if she's watching this, she'll know who it is. I think like people that are in leadership positions, have been in the industry, or they've been, you know, quite a decent amount of way into their career, will always have someone that they look back on and think that person, they might not necessarily have been a turning point, but they were an absolute inspiration, or they were a real kind of catalyst for my, you know, sort of laying some foundations about how I lead and how I've, you know, been effective as a leader. I had exactly the same thing. You know, I remember my first job in recruitment. I wanted to work for one of the big agencies, you know, the whole kind of buzz of London and the training element and stuff like that. And I remember my managing consultant, and I'd be amazed if he sees this or was watching this, because basically his name was Julian Downs. He was a great guy, and he was just very, he was very firm. He was very fair, but he had good humility, you know. But he had exceptional emotional intelligence, and he could read a room. And you know, the stuff I learned from him about, you know, fairness, consistency, and just you know, really throwing himself into everything with absolute passion and giving it everything, but also, you know, he could have a laugh, right? And you wanted to work for him. And I mean, not long after I left, I think him and his twin brother like went off and like moved to the Caribbean and started building yachts and some crazy stuff like this, right? But he was someone that really inspired me. So it's interesting how, you know, these sort of journeys that I think at the time these people won't even realise the positive effect they have on people. But you mentioned one.
I mean, I hope everyone in their career has someone like that. You know, I think
they should do.
Because having a good leader that inspires you and helps you grow, but also forms you into the person that you become as your own leader, I think is quite a cool thing to reflect on.
I think so, yeah.
It's quite cool. I've had a couple of those in my career, but obviously one more notable than most. And I hope that I'm that leader for people as well. You know?
No doubt, absolutely no doubt. Let's talk about the sort of that moment when you were, you know, all of this stuff that's kind of building up to. You know, I've got to move to the UK. It might not have been that. It certainly wasn't the weather that made you feel like that,
mate,
right?
I moved at the worst time of the year as well.
Oh, really? What
October, like an idiot.
Oh, right.
So clocks go forward, and I thought to myself, what have I done? What am I doing here?
Oh, no doubt. I mean,
4 o'clock darkness, mate. The earliest it gets dark in Sydney is 5:30
5:30, yeah. I know, yeah.
Cheering.
Yeah, so that was an interesting time to go. At least you joined when it was like, you know it's not going to get much better than this, as in like for the next few months. Sorry, as in, you know it's going to get better.
Oh, yeah.
Right? As in, like, actually, this is probably the worst it's going to get. Or kind of, well, actually, it's not, because December and January is absolutely shocking.
No, I thought that was a breeze compared to October. Really? October, I don't know. October to this day is my worst month every year.
Yeah. I've got to say it's not, because it's my birthday month, but I know exactly what you mean. Like clocks going back and all the stuff around it. But also you've come from like essentially like, it's kind of, it's spring going into summer, right?
It's opposite.
Yeah. So it's kind of like, and but so that moment, when did you have the moment where you thought, you know what, I've had a really good kind of phase of my career here. I want to challenge myself. You know, some people could go, oh, I'm going to stay here. I'm going to go to that. You know, I'm going to look to kind of progress to that next level. You obviously thought differently and thought, well, I'm going to do. You know, I'm going to go somewhere else, different geography. How did that happen? How did it come about?
Mate, I was always very hungry to work for HQ. Like, no matter what agency group I was part of, that was always on my bucket list. I was always on my, this is one of my top goals to try and achieve in my career. So I will never forget, back at IPG Media Brands, when I worked for Ansible, the mobile innovation agency, it was at a time when all of the Australian leaders got promoted to HQ in New York.
Right.
And I was craving to be one of those guys that was going to be moved over to HQ and work across, you know, global accounts.
Right. Yeah.
I was young at that point. You know, I had just started my career. I think I was maybe 22, 23. And so I was starry-eyed, and that for me was exciting. And I wanted to be a part of that. And then it kind of imprinted in my brain that that's always what I wanted to do, which was to work at HQ. And to that point, it almost feels like, it was like I made it moment. I'm not sure, but I definitely, when I moved here, for example, when I did move to the global role in the global HQ, I thought to myself, shit, what do I do now? I've reached my top, my peak.
So young as well.
Peak for myself, yeah. So I had that moment where I'm like, oh my God, what is it that I do now? And I kind of question that. But it's going back to your question, it was a no-brainer for me when I was offered the opportunity to move over to launch what I had built in Sydney, but launch it globally. I jumped at the chance. It was not even something that I even. It wasn't even something I questioned.
And was it when you thought early in your career about, you know, doing international working, you know, to broaden your horizons and you know, your experience, was it all? I don't know. You said that it would probably be driven by the agency that you were with, but did you have this kind of itch that you needed to scratch about the UK, or would it have been New York, or would it, because you mentioned New York? But
it was interesting. I came in 2019. I had a trip to Europe, and I had this for some reason. I wasn't able to align dates in the UK with some friends. So I ended up doing a week in London by myself in 2019.
Right.
And I fell in love with the city.
Right.
And I was by myself in London, which can be really daunting for some people.
Yeah. Never been here before?
Never. No, been once, but it was like a short stint, like 2 nights.
But Yeah, but you were on your
I
own.
was with friends that time, and I was
your
on my own, and I loved it. And
What did you do? Just literally
Everything-
classic tourist stuff.
everything you can think of that's a tourist adventure was what I did, and it was honestly one of the best weeks I've had in my entire life.
Brilliant.
And I fell in love with the city, and I just thought to myself, you know what, London's it. And at that point, I didn't even know at that point, like I hadn't even started working for WPP at that point, so I didn't have anywhere aligned that was HQ in London.
Oh wow, okay.
So it was just kind of stuck in my head that this is where I want to go. And it wasn't what drew me to WPP. It was an added bonus that it was, you know, part of HQ was in London. So when I got the opportunity to move over, it was, I remember it very vividly. I ended up doing, I didn't tell you this, but I ended up doing the global role in Sydney for like 6 months before moving over. So I was working like 1 p.m. until like 1 a.m. Sydney hours to try and cover
that's
it.
tough.
Yeah, it was good though. It was nice, like, you know, made the most out of it because it was summer in Australia. So I was cheering to have the days to myself. But yeah, it was interesting time. I remember it like it was yesterday.
Yeah, as soon as you say stuff like that, like trying to do a global role in Sydney, it makes me think about one of my very good recruitment buddies and a very good cycling buddy of mine as well. He'll know who he is when I'm talking about this, but he's from Melbourne and he recruits. He's based here. He's had a little boy now, but he'll go home to Melbourne, see his folks, but he'll do UK hours when he's over there. He'll do like 2 or 3 weeks. He'll do UK hours in Melbourne. And you know, he's just, I don't know how he does it. He's absolutely
Well, mate, that's the awesome thing about where I am now. They don't care where you are.
Yeah.
Like I could go home now and I mean, I don't know if my CEO would love this, but I could go home and do my job from there and they would be, you know, completely fine with it. It's the way the business has been built, which is, you know, I think it's such an attraction for talent in market, but it's, for someone like me to have that flexibility is just awesome.
But it is, but that's also the world. You know, our digital technology space. Obviously, COVID's changed quite a lot of things as well, like the way people, you know, live and work. There's a lot of people that I know, you know, kind of product directors, VPs, good friends of mine that have kind of moved out of London. You know, I was talking to someone earlier. I don't. You know, I come in 2 days a week now, as you know. I used to be in for like 20 years.
I remember 5 days a week, mate.
5 days a week. I mean, I don't think, you know, I could ever go back to that, you know, just because we've just got used to it now. And it's crazy, isn't it? I mean, COVID was 6 years ago, like a couple of weeks ago,
That's
right?
wild.
I mean, where's that time gone?
Yeah.
But it's changed a lot. But I also think that, you know, startup businesses with, you know, a kind of like flexible working, agile focus, you know, you get more out of your teams and you need that to attract the right kind of people as well, right? And it's an environment of trust and autonomy. And
well, I think that's an important thing you just said, trust, right? I think that's something that we've built the whole business around. And Paul, my CEO, has done that. You know, the whole idea is you have really bloody good people around you that you trust, that are high performers, and that's why the business is as successful as it is.
Yeah.
And without that trust, you can't do even the hybrid working, really, can you? I think it's an important factor.
Yeah. And Ricky and I are, you know, my business partner adopt and believe in exactly the same method and culture. You know, you've got to be, I think we said it earlier, but that kind of trust and that kind of autonomy, I really do believe, because we've seen it, you know, time and time again, that's how you get the best out of people, and 100%. People respect you and they want to work for you, and you know, you give them that sort of that freedom to do that.
It's where the best work happens. If you can trust, like if the trust is there and the person's a high performer, you know, I've seen it work in the best way it possibly can in terms of just delivery and value to the business, but also team culture.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
which is huge, right? And that's you know, I've always said people by people make a brand and they make that culture. And that's, you know, it's driven by everyone. It's not just driven by people at the top, right? And then people at leadership level. It's people form, you know, every person forms part of that culture and how that culture evolves, right? And I'm really interested to understand. I know we talked about this in the sort of, you know, doing some kind of like initial scoping out and prep for this, but I'm really interested to understand the difference, you know, the change. You know what's coming. You know what questions coming here. But like,
I've got to be careful here.
yeah, well, there is that. But obviously, I think like people, one of the things that I love about London is like, you know, it's so cosmopolitan. It's, you know, it's multicultural. We've got unbelievable people coming in from all corners of the world, like, you know, injecting skills, you know, culture into our companies, into our industries. You know, you've come from Australia. I mean, obviously it's a long way away, but there's, you know, I was fortunate enough to spend quite, you know, a bit of time there when I was younger. My dad lived there, and I've got some, you know, loads of friends in Oz as well. In some ways, like there's quite a lot of similarities, but I think on the tech side, like digital technology, it's quite different. And I know that you said, you know, it was a real adaptation. So I'm really like interested to understand in a little bit more detail, like what that is and how much you've had to adapt and why.
You're going to get me in trouble, mate.
I know, mate.
Well, I think it's a couple of things. I was reflecting about the question because we had obviously spoken about it prior.
Yeah.
I think it was a couple of things. I came over from a satellite office to HQ, right? And I think this naturally has more red tape.
Yeah.
You know, I've been very fortunate enough in the teams that I've worked in. It's always felt like very much like the startup version of that business. So we've always been able to be really scrappy and innovative and how we operate. But you know, I've been called many things in my career, but one of them that's kind of stuck with me, which I can't deny. It's, you know, I can be a bit of a bulldog.
Yeah.
And by that, it's, you know, I like to get shit done.
You've already sworn once already, mate.
Oh, yes, I never paid attention.
You've set the tone now, so
Okay.
it's fine. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
just
normally
to-
me, by the way, but
Okay.
I've been quite reserved. So yeah, you do it for me.
Just to get shit done.
Yeah,
You know, that's how I like to operate. So coming here, how do I say it pragmatically? It was difficult. I stepped on a few toes when I first got here, where I think the British culture is a little bit more, reserved's the wrong word, but a little bit
Not as direct.
not as direct. And I think my approach, the thing I had to learn, not the hard way, thank God, but what I had to learn was, you know, there's an art form to working with, again, a different type of group of people.
British people don't always say what they mean.
Mate, it's I'm gonna hold back. They don't. I think sometimes they're really overly polite, and unfortunately, what I see with that is it gets in the way of identifying what the real challenges are and then fixing those challenges. Because for me, I'm like, if it's not working, let's call it what it is, and let's then fix it together. Let's find a solution. But if we keep tiptoeing around the problem, we're just never going to get to a place that it allows us to move quickly, but also solve what's not working.
Yeah.
And that's what I found really difficult coming here.
Yeah.
It's that
navigating that.
It's the tiptoeing around a problem where I'm like, you know what, let's just call it what it is. It's screwed.
Yeah. It's not right.
It's not
this
working.
is what we need to do.
Correct.
Let's not be offended. Let's call it straight. Do you know one of the things that always makes me laugh? You know, all these years into my life, this is not a business related thing, but this will kind of sum up my, you know, as a Brit, this will sum up how I kind of think about it and the way that we are. You know, you're walking along, right, and you're on your phone and you're not paying attention, and some innocent person is just walking along. It's your fault. You know, and you smack into someone. The first thing that person says, "Oh, sorry, I'm sorry."
Right? Always
so sorry.
sorry. Yeah,
right.
always.
So sorry. It's a classic Brit thing to do, and it's like, you know, or you know, and queuing, like standing in a queue. You know,
Oh, you guys love a queue here.
love a queue,
Love a queue.
love a queue, right? So there's all this kind of stuff. So like when, like, you know, when this Aussie arrives, is like really straight talking and like used to that kind of culture all his life. It's like, oh my god, like, okay, how do I? It must be like, I'm in a new country, like I'm in a, you know, the way the business works is, you know, I'm still in the same company, but I've got to approach this differently, and some of the language and some of the tone, and it must.
It was
be,
like
you know,
it was getting my training wheels back on, if I'm honest with you.
I bet.
It was it was like, okay, well, it was a lot of self-reflection when I first got here. It was almost having to train the trainer again. Like it was going through the whole thing of going, how do I navigate? How do I influence to still get what I need without, you know, being such a bulldog, which was, you know, it was interesting. Thankfully nothing. There was no kind of pivotal moment where I had to go, oh shit, I have to fix this because I've done something, you know, too far the one way. But it was very much taking a step back. I did a lot. I did a lot more bird's eye view watching rather than coming
Self-reflection as well.
Self-reflection, but being able to
Yeah.
review that from a different
Holistically.
perspective, more listening than trying to come in so hard.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what made me notice is, just the way that people operate here is just so different.
Yeah.
And I know people probably back home, if they're listening to this, will think, what the hell are you talking about? But until you're here, you just don't realize like how different little nuances of the cultures are.
Yeah.
Like it's just the little nuances. But it's made me, when I go back home now, Tony, I'm like, man, this place is small. Like Sydney feels small and things feel very different now. Like it's interesting how quick you can adapt to somewhere. Like now I'm, I've still got the bulldog nature in me, but it's very toned down to what it used to be.
I was going to ask you about that, because when you go home, because to your point, like, you're used to get, how quickly you get used to somewhere. Do you like go home and like someone will be a bit direct with you and you're a bit like, or is it just still there? It's
My parents think I've become posh, which I've called bullshit on. But like, thank you. I think they've realized, they feel like I've become maybe a little bit, in their words, softer than what I used to be. But I don't think I have. It's just the way that they see the difference in me now. But I definitely, I'm more accustomed for a queue now than I used to be.
I bet. Yeah. Well,
and a coffee shop chain. You guys love a coffee shop chain.
We do. Although, there's loads of these sort of like independent I say boutique-y, but these little local coffee shops open up. But
yes, then they end up being a chain.
That is true. Then they get bought because they're amazing and all that kind of stuff. But it's interesting that you say about the kind of soft. One of my dad's best friends, who sad he's not with us anymore, but basically there's an irony in what I'm about to say. He was born here. He was English, right? But he moved to Australia. Met someone, married, had kids, and him and my dad. But they worked in the bank together here in London. They were friends for 60 years. He used to say, "Oh, poms are soft." I'm thinking, you are a pom. You are a pom. But he used to say, and he just used to say that it was so interesting, like going out there and like seeing the cultural differences. And I mean, obviously, he loved it, right? He married and he lived his 3/4 of his life out there. But it is interesting, and it's interesting how that adaptation has really come about. And you just kind of fall into it, and you just adapt. And you either do or you don't, right? And if you don't adapt, you don't succeed, do you? And you've clearly done that. You've embraced it.
Well, it's interesting. Like even on the flip side, right? Like I feel like you've got so many Brits in Australia. So I always wonder how they must. I mean, they do the opposite. They do the flip side of that.
Do you know what? I think it depends on what they do for a living. I have to say, because I think I've just a few of my friends in the recruitment industry, but also like within just technology, friends in product managers that have gone out there. They've always said that, the technology world out there is a bit behind.
Mate,
and
absolutely.
I'm probably being a bit diplomatic, but that's what they've said. I mean, they've probably said it a little bit stronger than that. But then other friends of ours have gone out there to they're tradespeople. They go out there to a friend of ours, a carpenter, has gone out there and building and stuff, and it's just a totally different environment. Yeah, very, very different. But I think in the tech world but I also think people go out there and they think, you know what, it's quite behind. But they see that as a challenge because they sort of want to help, like bring that market. I'm not saying they're going to do it overnight and align it with the UK, but they're definitely saying that they love the challenge and they can see it, really catching up. So I think there's different challenges either way, right? Let's talk about the transition from we talked about from Oz to here.
Yeah.
Not only that. You've then done that. I mean, you don't think you've by arse, do you? You've done that, but then you've gone from someone that is out and out agency, as we sort of touched on at the start. But you've gone from out and out agency into the cut and thrust and the magnification of a tech startup, right? Which is big. It's I've worked with tech startups for years, and all the spotlight, the VCs, the private equities, the pressure, the return on the investment, the spotlight. So, you're in this situation now. Like, tell us about that, the difference and
Yeah.
all the elements of that transition.
Well, mate, I've been really lucky in my career that I've always worked, kind of what I've alluded to is always in the startup of the agency, right? So I've
Yeah.
always kind of been that innovation hub, that
Yeah.
startup. So we've always had our own P&L, which has been more scrutinized than your normal agency P&L, or, your resources are much, leaner than you would in your bigger agency.
Yeah.
So I, luckily enough, had a lot of those kind of dynamics built into the way that I operate. So transitioning over to JUUL, which is where I'm at now, is it wasn't as challenging as moving to the UK.
Right.
If anything,
Okay.
it felt very much, JUUL's at an inflection point in their journey or maturity, and that is, scaling up and becoming more potentially like an agency. Like what we're finding at JUUL is that we're hiring more and more people from an agency background,
Yeah.
because we find that that's kind of the culture that we want to inhibit, and those are the types of talent that do really well at JUUL. So I've been really lucky and fortunate enough. JUUL is in a really good position, both from a market perspective, but also financial cash flow perspective for us at the moment. We don't have those constraints. Like I can actually go and do really good work, and I'm empowered to do that because we have the right resources to do so.
Yeah.
And we are,
That's the versatility and agility of a smaller company.
Mate, well, that's the thing. I've been here for 6 months, only 6 months, and be able to build a whole new department within that 6 months, plus run my existing department. So being given the autonomy, but also the trust and the empowerment to do like my job, but more than as well, is been the biggest thing that I'm like, wow, how have I not done this sooner? I thought that I had that in agency life, but coming here, the amount of stuff that you can get done in such a short period of time, it's like the perfect environment for me and my personality.
Yeah.
Because I can thrive and really, as I kind of said before, get shit done quite quickly. And it's
perfectly suited to you.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
100%. So that difficulty, that transition period wasn't so difficult. And what I think has been my benefit from my agency world is being able to deal with competing priorities. And that's what the agency world has really kind of set me up for, because in startups, you've got that. You've got the CEO, the CFO, you've got, your SLT. They all have different views of where the business needs to go because it is still so young, so trying to filter out those different priorities and understand the direction you need to take your department in is a craft in itself.
No, absolutely. And as you say, I think some people would like, if they worked sort of almost like in a startup kind of environment within a bigger agency, it's a great insight, but it doesn't always sort of set everyone up for that kind of next journey within a startup. Because obviously then when you move to a tech startup itself, which is client side, it's, it can be quite different. I mean, the environment is still different, but it sounds to me like you took loads of elements of that journey and you've kind of channeled it. And that's coupled with your kind of personality and your drive and your ambition.
I think it's also on that. It's my family's always ran small businesses, right? So I've always known how a small business operates compared to a big corporation.
Okay.
Because it's been with my blood within my family.
Right.
So I think if you haven't had that experience before, I think you'd find going from a big agency to a startup maybe quite difficult.
Yeah.
But I had almost this, I knew what to expect almost, in terms of how budgets are handled, how resourcing is handled, how close a founder wants to be to the decisions you make. It's that's a big thing that's different, right? And I think that's probably the biggest call out is, the founder wants to be very involved, whereas the big corporation or big agency, you're so far detached that you don't have that influence.
Yeah. Because there's tiers and tiers of leadership and hierarchy, right? Yeah.
And you can work one or two ways. It could work against you or it could work for you. And luckily for me, it works for me because, my CEO, Paul, loves to be really involved in product and he's a visionary. So for us, it works totally in our favor to be able to have a really clear direction of where we need to move towards.
Yeah, nice.
As a product.
Yeah, great. And one of the things that we talked about for a while actually in working together and hiring and building teams at JUUL, and it surprised me, but in another way it didn't, that you're kind of your your sort of passion and your ideas for hiring are very much, linked to, and you mentioned it earlier, that agency world, because of, all the benefits that you've had, and how you've been developed and the experience that you've gained from that agency world, that you're looking to sort of, you're doing it and looking even more so to sort of bring those skill sets and those backgrounds into JUUL as JUUL is scaling. And, you're very, you're very passionate about that. And you talk about it a lot, and it's interesting because, and I think one of the reasons I want to talk about that and for people to hear that is because having done a lot of recruitment, across digital technology for years, one of the things that I've always found is that a lot of companies, client side, in-house businesses that I work for, there's been a bit of a reluctance with some businesses to take people from agency side.
So crazy.
Yeah, right. And so I think so too. I mean, to be fair to some of those companies that I've worked with in the past, it might have been a little while ago, and mindsets are definitely changing. But it's still quite a,
why do you think it is?
It's a really good question. And I think it's because they like people that have just focused on, road mapping, like conceptualizing, building and shipping a product and being like living and breathing that product and that brand. Yeah. And I think they want to, it's almost like concept to completion. And, they want those people and those product teams to build within that client. And
still find those people from agency though.
100%, 100%. And I'm not, I don't really kind of sway either way as such, but I also know that, we've talked about it, but I've experienced it firsthand with candidates I've dealt with, that they have been really good at really adapting quickly, working at pace under pressure with big brands that really have high expectations, and their product craft is exceptional as an example, and designers, by the way. But I think that's what's driven it, and also some of these sort of startups, a lot of startups, they want people who have got experience of working in a startup, building products 0 to 1, and that whole kind of environment of a startup where you've got a lot more flexibility and autonomy to wear different hats because you have to. Whereas people sort of talk about sometimes in agencies it can be a bit siloed, and you're literally that's your role, right? Stay in your lane. So there's a big element of that, but obviously the way that JUUL is approaching things, obviously with a massive influence from you, that mindset's changing or changed.
Yeah, I mean, I'm lucky for me. I was given a chance by the guys at JUUL to they took a chance on me from coming from a big agency background. But I guess it goes back to my background being very much like I've been in the startup within the agency, so I've had to always wear naturally many hats, where I haven't always worn a traditional agency hat, where it is you stay in your swim lane and you stay there, and that's ultimately what you do. But that's the type of agency talent I look for, Tony. So when I'm hiring now, I want to see the type of teams that they were a part of and the types of roles that they were in within an agency.
This is drilled into my brain, right?
Yeah, mate, great. So my hiring through is going to be so much easier. So it's like, for me, it's like, if someone was a media planner and buyer and that's all they did in their career and they just went from different agency to different agency, probably not the right fit for us. Not the right fit for what I'd look for. However, if they did many different roles within an agency, that for me is a little bit more interesting, because they didn't stay in their swim lane. They got to experience many different hats, like what a startup basically needs. But you've got some really bloody good talent right now. Agencies are going through a weird time, just generally with AI and how fast things are moving, and their operating model and the way that they charge is changing, and it's causing a lot of disruption. So naturally, there's a lot of redundancies at the moment. So there's some really good talent out in market that we're finding that are perfect for the progression that we're moving towards as a business.
Nice. Okay, great. That's great to hear. And I'm sure people like listening to this and watching this will be really encouraged by that, because, like you say, there are some fantastic people out there, right? Really talented people, right?
I mean, I would say the only recommendation I would have for anyone coming from agency world, depending on, the AI ecosystem that you have in your agencies, you just need to really throw yourself in to be adaptive and agile in all of the different technologies that are available right now, because in a startup, you you have no option but to use it. You need to, and use it's an understatement. You need to be able to be so adept with AI. It needs to be something that you live and breathe in a startup world. Whereas agencies aren't necessarily there yet. Startup, how fast we're moving with it at the moment at JUUL is, last week, I thought I was getting, I was across and I was one of the pros in the business. This week, it's a completely different story with all the new changes in Claude. Like it moves so quickly that you just need to be across it to understand, how to do your role the best you possibly can.
Yeah, I said to one of my previous guests on there, Bridget, and she's VP in a really fast growing health tech. She's kind of always been from a health tech medicine. She actually was going to study medicine, right? But she was saying that there's not a day goes by where some element or something's happened within AI and something new's come about that doesn't blow her mind. I totally agree with that, right? I'm sure a lot of people would say the same. I mean, even today I've had a couple of conversations with some product designers and some roles that we're working on, and they were telling me about some of the sort of kind of tweaks and new stuff coming in and discoveries with Claude, and I just literally, I mean, they couldn't see me, but I sat on the phone. I'm literally.
Well, mate, I was on the Uber on the way here, and I built a little prototype, like an actual web application on the Uber here. That's how quick things have moved.
It's just
prototyping is wild compared to what it used to be now.
Absolutely.
You used to have to go through a UX designer to do all that stuff. Now, as a product owner, or any type of role in products, you can go and prototype in the matter of minutes versus what you used to have to do.
Absolutely blows me.
Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah, it is. Let's talk about JUUL. This pivotal role that you find yourself in. It's funny actually, because I remember we were sort of told that we've got a new VP of product coming in. This is his name. I remember looking at him and thinking,
who the hell?
I don't know this dude. Who the hell's this?
Yeah, where's he come from?
But also, I will caveat this by saying, I know I've been around like quite a while, but I don't know everyone. And because people say to me, "Oh, Tony, you know everyone in product." So I was like, I know a lot of people, but there's a lot of people I don't know.
Yeah.
And as it's just got bigger and bigger, and then obviously, particularly if someone's come from another geography. But I remember sort of seeing your profile and thinking, "Oh, agency, but okay, this guy is really interesting." And I'm trying to work out the correlation. How come he's come into a tech startup and all that sort of stuff? But let's talk about JUUL and that whole kind of brand advocacy and everything that the business is doing, because it is exciting. It's really cutting edge. It's really disruptive, and there's so much going on. It'd be great to sort of hear about that and kind of where you're at in that sort of journey and everything that's happening. It's so exciting.
Yeah, it is. I mean, you think about just traditional marketing, right? Traditional marketing is very much around spending money to try and attract customers or to advertise to them. Brand advocacy is that on the flip side, it is the complete opposite to that.
Yeah.
If you think about, I use this example, and this is the best way I try and explain brand advocacy to someone that's not aware of what it is. I have a really good girlfriend of mine. She loves Lululemon.
Yeah.
Right. But she's not a creator or an influencer in any capacity, but she will tell all of us about how much she loves her Lululemon tights. And then that for me naturally influence my purchase decision, and I now go buy Lululemon for the gym. What we're trying to do at JUUL is capture that friend, capture and reward that friend for doing what she's already doing, where she's become an advocate of a brand she already loves and is a brand fan. We're rewarding her for doing what she's already naturally doing, which is telling more and more people about her experience, which is obviously quite positive, and about the products that she's buying, which then helps influence other decisions in the purchase funnel.
Which is powerful, because the way that social media just literally just spreads like wildfire, it's 100%. A great vehicle to be able to use it and get that out there, right?
And social media is obviously a massive channel for us to do that on, because you've got content creators, and content creation is where you get that scale and reach. But the difference is we're not looking at talking about, your celebrity influencers or, those guys with the really polished content. We're looking at your mum and dad, that just really love that brand, that want to post content about that brand, and then reward them for doing that. And help them influence others in doing the same thing.
Nice.
And that's really the difference between, paid advertising, but also influencer to brand advocacy. What we're seeing, we call them nano influencers, really, or nano, advocates, nano creators.
Yeah.
They drive so much more engagement and revenue for a brand compared to a normal influencer. It's actually quite wild. Like the days of an influencer, given the algorithm changes in social platforms, you don't need a massive follower count anymore to go viral.
No,
You know,
you really don't, right? We see it every day. You know,
100%.
crazy.
Like I have one of our big beauty brands. We did a test with recently, and we did a test to show to validate that it didn't matter how many follower counts you had.
Right.
You could still drive tremendous value or revenue for that brand. We actually saw in that small window by removing any threshold of follower counts that actually people with under 1,000 followers drove 33% of the revenue in that period of time. So guys that literally have maybe a couple hundred, if that, driving that huge incremental influence and purchase behavior. So advocacy is such an untapped tool at the moment, but brands that really lean into it are the ones that are really skyrocketing. Like, you know, our brands are huge that we work with. Like we work with Target in the US, and you know their advocacy base is in the millions, which is huge. So JUUL helps enable that to happen.
Yeah, it's amazing. And for people that are listening and watching this that don't necessarily haven't come across it before, when people, you know, that when they are an advocate of that brand and you know they're pushing that, you know, some of it's like unconsciously, right? It just, you know, even just saying to you, oh, I like Lululemon, you know, and it kind of it evolves from there. How do these people get rewarded? How does that sort of reward system work? How does it happen?
Yeah, so JUUL purposely is an infrastructure play. So we purposely don't have a seat at the table. So you won't know the JUUL branding because we're the mechanics behind the brand that enables that to happen. So you'll know the brand, and you will be the secret sauce behind that brand that's activating advocacy. So a lot of the way that advocates are rewarded is by we have different types of challenges or tasks for the advocates to participate in.
Okay.
They participate in that challenge and they get rewarded for doing so. So all they have to do sometimes is simple surveys so the brand can get to know you better. It could be creating or posting content. It could be going out and trying a new product and then giving your honest review of that product.
Right. It's all exposure, right? It's all
correct. And it all drives tremendous value for a brand. We have our own metric at JUUL called gross advocacy value, or GAV.
Yeah.
And it's the right mixture of earned media value and affiliate sales. And that ultimately is your driving North Star metric for a brand. Everything we do at JUUL is to drive or increase GAV. And so even your surveys or your reviews, they already drive earned media value. The way that we can report and the way that we do report at JUUL just shows such tremendous uplift in just the small, easy things that someone can do. You don't need to do this beautiful TikTok or YouTube tutorial video. That's not what drives revenue or drives sales for brands. It is the simple, honest, in your messy bathroom review of a product is what drives
real life.
Yeah. Real life. And people are leaning into that more and more with more and more AI generated content that's polished and seamless. People have got a sixth sense to that now. They almost steered separate away from that. They want the real messy, authentic content, which is advocacy.
That's really interesting
authentic
to hear
content.
Because I find it particularly interesting because there's within sort of the media, social media, and you know, my daughter's 20 years old, right? You know the pressures, and you see the stuff on the news, and you hear about, you know, pressure with sort of fashion and, you know, weight and stuff like that with people and judging and, you know, all the bullying and stuff. You hear all this stuff, and because a lot of that stuff is just not the real world, is it? It's just not, you know, a lot of it's just so, you know, AI generated or whatever it may be, but it's just not day-to-day life. So when you hear stuff like that, actually it's quite refreshing because it's raw. It's like, it's real. It's exactly authentic as it is.
I mean, it takes a lot of trust in JUUL from the brand to be able to go down that avenue as well, right? Because brands have traditionally wanted very pop. That's why they love influencer, because they can control the narrative, right? They can control the look and feel.
Yeah.
Whereas advocacy is you have to be comfortable with losing control. That's what advocacy is. You have to be comfortable knowing and allowing and enabling advocates to kind of do what feels natural to them and what they love to do, and then reward them generously for doing so. Yeah,
that's really interesting. Unbelievably, we're kind of coming towards the end. It feels like it's right. We were sort of like talking about before, you know, but behind the cameras, like thinking, you know, it's a long time. Blah, you're a bit nervous, that kind of thing, both of us. But it's been a great conversation. I suppose really just to wrap up, there's a couple of kind of final questions that I'd love to ask you. One of them is, we talked about a lot about the journey and a lot of things that are going on in your world, technology, the drivers, new things coming in. With all of that in mind and a sort of a little bit of an eye on the future, which we've all got, because there's always that curiosity about what it's going to be, what's going to happen. What are you most excited about right now?
Excited or most frightened about?
I mean, you can answer both, mate. It's up to you. But I'm just really interested because you're in the thick of it. Like what, excited, frightened,
I think the way, speaking very much from the industry that I'm in and the role that I'm in, what excites me is the idea of how fast you can build
right
now and how fast you can get things into customers' hands.
Yeah.
Like it is unprecedented to what we've ever seen. We're talking a matter of days, talking about an example like Claude Cowork was built on a weekend, I think, or over a week. The fact that you can build so quickly, and that's what we're doing now, it excites me, but what also frightens me is the speed of change.
And it is frightening, right? It is.
Yeah. Just because things are just moving. Like, mate, for me to keep up to what's going on, I'm watching YouTube videos as I shower just so I can actually get my finger on the pulse of what's going on. Otherwise, next week it's
you're left behind.
100%.
Yeah.
I think that's the challenge that product, anyone working in product is going to have, is you've got to keep up with the pace of things moving.
I've lost count of how many times I have that conversation. If I was to average it out, I've lost count of how many times I've had that conversation or that feedback from product folk, right? Just saying literally that, just changes so quickly, trying to keep up with it, listening to podcasts on the train in.
But maybe what's so exciting about it is like the idea of like your normal engineers changed,
Oh yeah.
Product is becoming more and more, it's crossing over more than we've ever seen before, where product can build a prototype, an engineer just needs to activate and build the back end, and you've got a working MVP in market in a matter of a really short time. So I think what's quite interesting and what is exciting is the relationship between engineering and product is evolving and changing massively.
Yeah.
Like an example, and I can kind of end on this, is we're now having to rebuild and redefine our entire operating model with engineering from a product perspective because it's evolved that much.
Wow. That's, I'm starting to hear this more and more. That's mind blowing, isn't it, really?
The old ways don't work anymore.
No. But it's like before. I mean, it's so much more accelerated now, but it's like before when a new technology was created and brought out, basically it's a target for someone to topple and better it as soon as possible. It was always the thing, a new front end technology came out, right? Well, someone's going to devise something, and develop something that's going to be better, but obviously now it's so much more, accelerated and magnified because of AI.
I think the old process doesn't work anymore,
no,
right?
Exactly.
Like the idea of creating a PID, a product requirements document, and then going through this whole UX, process and then testing that in market. We're not even doing PIDs anymore. We're going straight to prototyping. So I think this whole, the old process just doesn't exist. It can't exist anymore in this day and age.
No, exactly. I think that's the thing. It can't. Final question. I'd love to finish it. I love to finish on this, and I ask everyone this. What advice would you give to people watching this, aspiring, it doesn't have to be product managers. It doesn't, people in our digital technology industry. It could be relevant to products, obviously, because you're a VP of product, but just someone what advice would you give to someone who, is early in their career and, they're very ambitious and, they want to sort of build and carve that right road for them, that right path for themselves. What advice would you give them based on your experience and, things that you do differently as well, like knowing what you know now? What advice would you give them? And also someone who is looking to relocate, from a different country?
Don't be scared to experiment. And what I mean by that is don't feel like you have to have that set role and you stay within that set role's parameters. Okay. What I found quite interesting in my career is the ability to be able, I did many different things. I could have stayed in AdOps, I could have stayed in media, I could have stayed in production. Now I'm in a startup. What I've found that's been really beneficial to me is the idea of having experience across many different sectors or different types of that sector, which has helped form me as a leader and my perspective as a leader. I have an interesting view now because I can put different things or pieces together that I wouldn't necessarily be able to do if I just stuck in my swim lane continuously. Yeah. So, I mean, it's not going to be for everyone, but I would definitely recommend if you can and you have the opportunity to do so, is experiment or try different roles. Don't just always stay in the same.
Yeah.
And you could stay in product, but just work across different industries if you can.
Yeah.
And have that experience and that different view. But then some people are going to want to live and die in finance, for example. And that great. Hats off to you. It's definitely not for me.
Yeah.
But I think I think it really shapes a good leader and good perspective on how to view things, and also just stay humble. Still want to be a bit of a bulldog, but remember humility is key.
I think that staying humble element it's a really elementary thing actually that is really effective, but a lot of people overlook it, right? But it's nice to hear that.
Yeah.
And how about the kind of thing about embracing a different country, and what advice would you give on that?
Don't think what anyone could ever tell you is what to expect. It's like the thing that I would say, no matter how many people told me what to expect about moving to the UK, until you do it, you just don't know. I think keep friends and family close. Like you're going to need it when you go through such a big change.
Yeah.
But be patient. I've had friends that have moved here last 6 months and then left. And I'm like, you need at least 2 years to really feel settled here. And
give it time.
And you give it time.
Yeah.
Really give it some time.
Embrace it.
Be patient. It's going to feel uncomfortable, but uncomfortable is where you grow.
Yeah.
And And now I go home and think, shit, I didn't think I could ever move back home now.
Do you really think that?
It was hard.
Periodically.
Like Christmas, and I was like, oh no, shit, I think I've turned that corner.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, it feels.
That's a real thing, right? It
happens.
It's a big thing to say. Yeah. But I suppose when you're here, you're just so engrossed in your day to day, and you're embracing of like culture and the new norm for you. It's like actually it just becomes a norm. It's amazing how actually as human beings we don't like change, but then actually how quickly you embrace habits and just like you just get into normality, and all of a sudden you forget, periodically other things.
Well, that's really another thing I would recommend as well for anyone listening is get comfortable with change. I think that's the biggest. Like, we live in a world of change right now. We have no option other than change.
Yeah.
And that was something I did early on in my career, and that's why I moved different roles and different agencies. Is because I was a weird one. Like I loved change, and so I like being uncomfortable. So being comfortable with being uncomfortable is a key thing.
Look, as expected, that is brilliant advice, and I think anyone watching this would be like, actually, because it's real food for thought, and it's hopefully that resonates with people that are kind of looking to make that change. Really step out their comfort zone. I agree with you, by the way. I think pushing yourself out of your comfort zone is the best way for you to better yourself and become better at everything you're doing. It's something that I am really trying to do with lots of different things. I'm failing on some of it, winning on others.
So we all.
But you're right, but that's how you learn. So listen, I think it's brilliant advice, and also Blake, thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for having me, mate.
I absolutely loved it. I've always enjoyed spending time with you. So thank you so much, mate.
Thank you.
Cheers, buddy.
Cheers.